Chainsaw Man is my favorite manga and story of all time. It was one of the most important parts of my life for almost 2 years. Up until October 2020, I had only collected the first volumes of manga series that I had already seen in anime form, except for the Mega Man manga I have. I had never collected a manga series as it releases, and when I picked the first volume off of one of the shelves on a whim at Forbidden Planet, I didn't think I would be buying it and anticipating a new volume every 2 annoyingly long months. It took over a year and a half for me to read and collect the series as a whole, and I could say it was one of the brightest spots in my life during that time period. So of course, when the anime was announced, I was hyped as hell. I could finally say for once I had read the manga before an anime was released for the first time in my life. The trailers all looked incredible, so there was no way it could disappoint me in any way. Right? Little did I know that when your favorite series gets adapted, everything and anything is fair game to mentally compare while watching. From scenery, shot composition, the color palette, the tone, slight changes in character design, differing facial expressions or body language, differing translations from basically the same lines in the manga, pacing, etc. Watching the anime has just been a seriously different experience from anything else I've ever seen. While I think the anime is an amazing show so far, its number of differences add up to the point of making it an almost entirely different story experience. One small cutscene from the second chapter did drive me to my first manga reader-induced fit, but that's all I have as a real solid criticism for the anime. Initially, this video is going to be why the manga is way better than the anime, because when I started writing it a couple of weeks ago, I was still bitter as hell, but since episode 4, I have begun to seriously find the anime as almost a companion piece to the manga. So in this video, I'm going to vouch for the anime to showcase its value as an adaptation and as an interpretation. Also, please subscribe, hit the like button, and comment to support my algorithmic agenda. I have forgotten to say that in all my videos so far. Before this video really goes anywhere, I'm gonna have to define what an adaptation really is. I don't feel like actually looking for a good definition though, so I'm gonna just use the biology definition on Google. An adaptation is a change or the process of change by which an organism or species becomes better suited to its environment. In this definition, the organism would be the original source material, and the environment would be the medium it's being adapted to. When adapting a story into another medium, making sure the story uses the newfound strengths of the new medium is key to making it worthwhile in the first place. If a manga is adapted into an anime, especially one of the action variety, what is the point of the anime if it's going to be barely animated? I found myself asking this question about a year ago when I was watching the new Shaman King reboot. I was pretty into the story and characters, but the action in the anime was completely butchered. Action scenes are just barely animated in the show, at least in the 30-ish episodes I watched. Because I couldn't stand the slideshow nature of it, I dropped it and decided to just read the manga. So I got the first 3 in 1, and I loved it. The story was still great, but the action scenes hit way harder because of the paneling. The manga was exactly what I hoped for, but to my surprise, it genuinely made me kinda hate the anime because it committed an adaptational sin. Cutting content for no good reason. A few foundational slice of shaman life chapters that helped the audience to really familiarize themselves with these main characters and really find a reason to give a damn about them were taken out. The second episode of the Shaman King anime adapts the manga's first real life or death fight in the series from a manga that decides to wait a bit for the audience to really care about the well-being of these characters. The anime directors just didn't catch the memo and decided to make sure that their shonen anime had as much of an action-packed start for maximum viewer retention, I guess. Funnily enough, my only truly problematic change from the Chainsaw Man anime also takes place in its second episode. After explaining this change, this video is going to be mostly sunshine and rainbows. In this episode, 14 pages are basically not adapted, a few of which actually have a double fight too. However, that's not the main problem. The issue is that the scene dropped out of the anime was key to the early characterization of the very controversial protagonist, Denji, who is my goat honestly. Now, some lines are reincorporated into the episode, but the lack of their true context hurts the impact of the lines, and the anime-only's understanding of the characters are affected in my opinion. I'm not going to really get into how exactly these changes affect how people view these characters to a heavily detailed degree, because this ain't a character analysis, but I'll say this. All introductory scenes are very important to keep when a main character as misunderstood as Denji are being showcased. Alright, no more negativity. It's time to really get into why this anime has value. Because I got into my only real issues with this adaptation and that tangent on Shaman King, I hope I've made it clear that an adaptation should use its own medium to the best of its abilities and to not cut content if possible. especially moments that impact the viewer's understanding of the story. After episode 2, the Chainsaw Man anime not only really shows the real benefits that an adaptation can provide, but also carved out its own identity that I've come to respect over the course of its run. First off, I have to talk about the truly impressive visual direction of the anime, which is adapting from one of the most brilliantly paneled pieces of sequential art in recent memory. One of the main reasons why the manga is my favorite is simply because Tatsuki Fujimoto uses the comic medium to its fullest potential. Action in the manga just hits different because it reads so well, and it breaks manga conventions that I've never seen before. Like, look at this double page spread in the manga's first chapter. Double page spreads are common, but I've never seen a spread of two images that seamlessly mesh with each other, but are also not even at the same angle to begin with. I've been reading comics since I was 4, and I've just never seen stuff like this before. Even simple moments of dialogue can show something brilliant, like this panel that shows that the character is speaking within the building just by having the speech bubble inside of that space, obscured by the building's windows. Fujimoto just clearly has a godly understanding of the comic book medium, and he uses it to tell his story that only a manga can. I just stand the hell out of the manga just now to cue you into my opinion that I don't think this anime can necessarily beat out the manga visually. But the sheer quality and consistency of its direction is impressive nonetheless. It shows the advantages of not just animation, but film as a whole. The people in charge of the anime really took the fact that Fujimoto is heavily inspired by film to heart, as basic character movement is done with way more care than most anime ever do. Basic walk cycles, character expressions, everyday activities like the characters sitting around having a meal, fixing a tie, etc., are all animated to painstaking detail. It's almost like the characters are on a set. The almost live action-esque quality of the movements grounds the characters more in reality than the manga for sure, and the angles and camera movement present in the anime drives this creative decision further home. I think this anime maybe has some of the best cinematography we've ever gotten in a TV anime. So many scenes are just screenshot material with a sense of lighting that isn't present in most TV anime, and the aforementioned camera movement really shines not just in action scenes but all throughout. I think the best showcase for the anime was during the Eternity Double arc, which was the first section of the anime that really showed the advantages film have over comics. In these episodes, the visual distortion is present in the hallways through a fisheye lens effect, which is actually present in a few panels of the manga. The fixed monotonous lighting of their hotel, and the sounds of the clock ticking indefinitely at a fixed time really helped to put the audience in the character's shoes, amplifying the dread past what the manga could achieve. Putting the fishbowl lens effect right on a crazed Kobeni's face was also an extremely inspired choice. Switching angles, the anime will literally put you in the character's shoes every now and then, by actually giving you their first-person view. Sometimes they're in action, sometimes not, but anytime this happens, it's a very effective way at conveying how the characters are feeling during the unexpected and surprising moments of the series. Now, I haven't really talked about the action extensively, since it's the aspect of the adaptation that rarely outdoes the manga, even if the animation during these segments have been great. There's two action scenes that I feel illustrate the strengths of the anime and the limits it has when adapting from a visually ingenious manga. In the most recent episode at the time of writing this part of the script, 8, one of my favorite fights from the manga was adapted, Aki vs. Katana Man. While the fights are both short in the anime and the manga, I gotta say my favorite visual aspects of the counter just weren't carried over. One change was kinda reasonable because breaking into a nondescript background just for one impactful, highly iconic shot isn't really the anime style. However, the other was something I'm not really sure could even really be conveyed like the manga could. This other change was making the cursed double's fingers not come from outside the visual planes of existence that the anime had. Oh boy, I'm about to sound like a brat explaining this complaint. So, in the manga, the cursed double's fingers are so otherworldly that aspect is visually represented through it appearing from outside the panel's borders a few times. I think that is a very clever way of delivering that information visually to the reader, and I was curious about how that aspect would be shown in the anime. This is going to sound a little wild, but I thought that maybe the aspect ratio of the scene would be shrunken to like 4:3, so that the fingers could shoot Aki's nail sword from outside of the show itself, in a way to convey that imagery. But alas, we did not get that. Instead, we just got an incredibly well animated fight that looks amazing technically, where every attack looks like a life or death decision on Aki's part, but makes the fingers barely noticeable on first watch. The fingers were what I was excited to see actually get adapted, because it's the aspect of the fight in the manga that makes it memorable for me. The fight is still great in the anime, but it could have been better from a creative standpoint in my opinion. Back to positivity, I mentioned how there was a fight that does illustrate the anime's strengths, and that fight is the leech level fight, which to me is the first time the anime did a scene better than the manga. The anime's animation here is just superb, really accentuating the grossness of the leech level's design, which was clearly nasty in the manga, but seeing it actually move around amps the character's appeal to another level. You can really feel the weight of those tentacles, which don't look like anything but tentacles, throughout the fight, smacking the hell out of Denji. Again, the camera movement here is great, with cuts like this that really keep you immersed in the action, with silky smooth transitions and use of 3D backgrounds. Hell, there are multiple bits of choreography in the fight that weren't even in the manga, that are just hella hype. Coupled with the passionate voice acting and fitting music, I really would be lying if I said the fight in the manga was a better experience. The extra moments I talked about just now were one of the strengths I was alluding to. The anime actually has added a bunch of little details that add more visual context, or entire scenes that were in the manga. These newly added touches are my favorite aspect of the anime, because not only do they make sense, but in the case of extra choreography and scenes, they are completely in character too. I think the most notable instance of this is also in episode 4, where we get around 4 or 3, I don't remember, minutes of Aki scenes that were in the manga that were very effective at characterizing him. Almost wordly too, which is arguably the most impressive part. Seeing Aki fix his tie before giving a report to Makima, make his coffee very professionally, and have a very early smoke in the morning was just very novel to see because it felt like I was watching something that definitely would have happened in between chapters. That feeling is something I've never really felt before while watching an anime, so I think that's amazing. All of these little changes add up eventually though, and make the Chainsaw Man anime and manga two very different beasts that mainly differ at their cores in tone and pacing. With all of the extra stuff that anime has to offer, the pace has been irreversibly changed from the manga, making it way slower and methodical feeling than the chaotically paced source material. The manga doesn't let the reader, and by proxy the characters, have a moment to catch their breath outside of the maybe at most 2 to 4 chapters in between arcs. The lack of time the characters, especially the ignorant protagonist Denji, have to reflect on their terrible work circumstances, development of relationships, constant violence, and how objectively terrifying the world is, or even how predatory some characters in the story are, before at times it's too late, are made subtle yet tragically powerful through the original erratic pacing. The anime, however, takes a different approach and showcases the events at the speed at which the characters experiencing these moments would have possibly felt it, and that speed is slow. The terrible events happening to many of the characters is just an average day for them, so these moments could be interpreted to not fly by at all. The choice to take the slower approach leads to perhaps a more obviously darker and almost melancholic tone, which isn't really what the manga went for explicitly. The manga is definitely dark, but the choice of occasionally lightly rendered character art and the faster pace makes the story not feel as heavy as it actually is on a subtextual level. You have to actively choose to look over the events of the story to find that inner darkness of the manga. In the anime, I feel like people would find it easier to do so since it really wallows and lingers on every moment it can justify, perhaps endearing people to the characters easier and thus making moments in the future hit even harder than it perhaps did for manga readers like me. I wouldn't know though. What I do know is that this change of pace and tone inherently also changes the appeal of the series, and maybe a few weeks ago around the time episode 3, I would have said that this change isn't something I'm really into, and that as an adaptation it's failed to capture the spark that made the manga so special. But as of now, I feel like I'm actually pretty appreciative of it, and find that while it doesn't satisfy me the way the manga does, it's found its own spark that makes it a worthy adaptation in my eyes. In fact, I think I'm glad it's different. So all in all, I believe that you should read the manga if you're an anime only, because you're missing out on a wonderfully created manga. But if you're a manga reader who chooses to ignore the anime, please watch it since the anime has plenty of new content to actually offer. Both versions of this incredible story deserve to be experienced. Alright, that was the end of the video, my longest video so far. If you haven't checked out my previous videos, please do so, especially the George video, which I'm really proud of. So, if you forgot to press subscribe, do that, like the button, blah blah. Okay, end of the video. Bye bye.